Good morning, everyone. My name is Maurizio Mariani. I'm the director of Eating City, one of the partners of this very nice and amazing project called GreenPath. GreenPath is a European project in Horizon, executed by a consortium of 13 partners from 10 different European countries. The project aim is to support a coherent and effective policy making to advance environmental sustainability and social well-being in Europe and beyond. I mean, we are in a really difficult time, I should say, for this kind of issue by the climate emergency, economic crisis, pandemic, and geopolitical instability. Social inequality is deepening. So research by GreenPath wants really to highlight for crucial process of decision-making for government. The project is seeks to establish a platform that is called the GreenPath Hub, where we will post, where we will load all the research coming out from the project and many other documents that should be useful for policy making, for civil society, for any kind of stakeholder. We have several different topics. Of course, the one of today is food and also a little bit agriculture. Also, agriculture is really another cluster managed by other partners. We are in charge of the food one, and there is this webinar. There is a policy, a document, policy paper. There will be a national seminar in Italy on April 10, and many other activity on the project till the end of next year, 2026. So we are really in the middle. This webinar is part of 15 webinar include in the working package number 3, and is for dissemination and exchange with different stakeholders. So that's the main scope of our project. Now I really like to let the stage to Chiara, my colleague, to introduce the topic and all the speaker of today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Maurizio, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Chiara Falvo. I'm a project manager of the European funded School Food for Change project at Eating City with Maurizio. And I'm also a PhD researcher at the University of Turin, completing my PhD on sustainable public food procurement, and in particular, the legal aspects. It's a pleasure for me to co-moderate this session today with Sylvestre Nivet. He is a project manager at Agores, a French association bringing together more than 1,500 public catering managers. And that's why Sylvestre brings over 2 decades of experience in public catering and local food system transformation. And today we are honored to have also distinguished speakers ranging from different disciplines and countries, and also bridging the theory and the practice. So we have Professor Roberto Caranta, who is my also supervisor of the thesis, and he is a full professor here at the University of Turin, a leading expert in European law, public procurement law, and their intersections with sustainability topics. Then we have Professor Bent Ekberg Mikkelsen, who is professor at Lund University in Sweden and at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark. And he is a specialist in public health, nutrition, and sustainable food urban systems. Then we have our Bettina Bergman Madsen from Copenhagen, who is one of the leading experts on public food procurement and public procurement in general. She's a lawyer and she's a practitioner with many years of experience in implementing sustainability strategies and policy goals at the local level. And I will provide a more detailed presentation about our speakers before their presentation, but for now, this is just to give you a glimpse of the kind of expertise that we have today. And this webinar is focused on public food procurement that, as you know, is widely recognized as a very strategic policy tool to achieve a wide range of benefits linked to social, environmental, and health outcomes, and for a multiple range of beneficiaries, because there are children involved, but also for example, in the health sector, there are many patients in hospitals. There are a lot of public institutions in general serving food. So really the range of impact that could be achieved with this tool are enormous. And however, as was highlighted also by the policy paper drafted by Risteco, 18 City, the impact of this tool is also limited by a number of challenges. One is, for example, the importance that costs have over quality and over sustainability, and also a very fragmented legal framework where we have different levels of ambition across countries at the European level. And now I would add that we are facing, as was anticipated also by Maurizio, we are facing a moment of a crucial moment of where the European policy and the legal framework are at a turning point. So we have a new political direction for the European Commission with a new vision that was released last month, a new vision for agriculture and food that is probably marking the end of the Farm to Fork strategy. And we have to recall that under the Farm to Fork strategy, there was a tentative to shift, already to push a shift from voluntary to mandatory measures for sustainable public food procurement, because they recognize the limited impact of voluntary measures for a systemic change. And then we have the revision of the 2014 directives, public procurement directives. So this opened the door for potential reforms. So this is a very strategic moment. We have also other models, like global models, like China's state-led approach that illustrate different methods of using procurement in a strategic way. So this raises pressing questions, and today we will try to delve into these some of these aspects of law, policy, governance, and practice also. So we have 5 key objectives for today's webinar. The first is exactly to explore the policy and legal frameworks and which are the strengths and weaknesses of European public procurement law in embedding sustainability. Then we will we want to showcase best practices, so over also bringing the expertise of Bettina and from our co-moderator, Sylvestre from France. We want to address implementation challenges with them, and also promote policy innovation. So trying to understand if there were already some good experiences, good practices of, for example, implementing new technologies for improving the efficiency and effectiveness of public food procurement. And at the end, the goal is really to have a rich discussion, bringing together policy, research, and practice. And so we would like this webinar to end with some concrete recommendations about policy proposals, but also some implementation advices, and new awareness about the innovation and strategic potential of public food procurement that for sure needs a stronger connection between the actors. So also we want to, this is an opportunity for networking, for cross-sector collaboration, and yeah, with the hope of scaling up the best practices and sustainable public food procurement. So we, with these objectives in mind, we look forward to a stimulating discussion that, yeah, that today we'll try to delve into the future, the present and the future of a sustainable public food procurement. And so I would like to set the stage. I set the stage, tried to give an overview, but now I would like to give the floor to Professor Roberto Caranta to unpack more the legal challenges. And so Professor Caranta has contributed to a number of key European studies on sustainable public procurement. He has co-edited recent books on sustainable public food procurement, together also with Maurizio Mariani, and a book on mandatory sustainability requirements in public procurement, with both a European and a non-European also perspective. He has led the European-funded research project Sapiens Network, where I was also part. And the Sapiens Network was the first European-funded research and training program exclusively dedicated to sustainable public procurement. Yeah. And so. In his presentation, I would like Roberto to focus on the shift from voluntary to mandatory sustainability criteria. So what legal reforms at the EU level would be necessary to make sustainability requirements more binding and more effective. Also, how to balance market efficiency and sustainability. So, in order to sustainability criteria not be sidelined in tenders, and also concerning governance, what lessons can the EU policymakers draw from different governance models, using public procurement as a tool for a systemic transformation of food systems. And before giving the floor to Professor Caranta, I forgot to mention some housekeeping rules, so sorry for that. I would like to remember the participants that the webinar is recorded, and also that we don't have at our disposal the chat for the questions, because it's not available, but you can raise your questions through the Q&A tool. and we will gather them and answer them at the end in the part dedicated to the roundtable and the Q&A in order to have a better flow of the presentation and the discussion. And so, without further ado, let's begin. And thank you, Roberto, for starting this interesting webinar.
My pleasure, Chiara. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you and Maurizio for having me. It's always good to, let's say, have some food for thought with such distinguished speakers as today. So basically, I'm to cover 3 points, starting from shifting from voluntary criteria to mandatory criteria. Already a few years ago, the Commission realized that voluntary is not enough in general in sustainable public procurement. Is not enough because, of course, you have some, I don't want to say, well, okay, let's say this in a good way, dreamers like Bettina really showing the way, but Bettina, she is not our average procurement official. And a lot of procurement officials, also depending on the country, have other kind of pressures. They tend to do things as they have always done things because they think, oh, it's less risky. I'm still alive, so let's go on doing what I've always done. And of course, by doing what we have always done in the past 200 years, we are basically laying this planet waste. So we really need to change. So Commission is advocating and started working a lot on mandatory public procurement criteria. What is the problem of mandatory public procurement criteria? There are a few that can be horizontal, like for instance, integrity, working conditions. They are not sector specific. So you can have them in the general directives. Other criteria are sectoral, so you need to put them in sectoral legislation. For instance, legislation on deforestation, legislation on clean vehicles, and so on and so forth. And let's say until last year, this has been very intense. It has been more than 50 pieces of sectoral legislation approved of EU sectoral legislation that have included provisions on sustainable public procurement, mandatory provisions on sustainable public procurement. And this was also the idea behind the farm to fork. But, well, as Chiara has already told us, the farm to fork is, well, kind of that. Commission was late on the farm to fork compared to other legislative files, and now it is no more going on that topic. So, what can still be done? As Chiara was already anticipating, the work is now open on the revision of the directives. These are general directives. They are not so suited to a specific sector like food. Well, couple of years ago, with no, maybe it was less than a couple of years. Well, last year with Maurizio, we were in Nantes, France, and there was some discourse about introducing a food exception in the directive, saying, no, food follows different rules is not really under EU public procurement. This would be a double-edged sword because, of course, this might be, let's say, a good opportunity for some buyers to say, okay, I don't have to advertise at European level, so I can really buy local, go sustainable. But it might also be an occasion for other buyers to say, okay, so I have no obligation to buy sustainably, and so I go to the lowest price. Anyway, I don't think this is an option that is going to fly. What might we be having? Well, now sustainable public procurement has been coupled with resilience. Resilience is the new catchword. And of course, concerning food, resilience means short supply chains. Probably that is the way that we might consider something about food, or at least very relevant for food in the reform. There is this very fresh communication by the Commission from February, a vision for agriculture and food. There is a few words on food procurement, but I think they are kind of heavy words. First, because they actually refer to short food supply chains, which was something that the Joint Research Council had said, no, that's not so relevant. No, apparently it is relevant politically. And they are really breaking a kind of taboo in European public procurement. There is a super dirty word in public procurement that you don't pronounce in front of children. And this super dirty word is 5 letters. It is local. Well, this communication is actually talking about the need to go back to roots and link between food territoriality, cultures, and local tradition. This might be a sign that really something is shifting, but not on the surface, but on the bottom. It might be an earthquake. This is just a communication with a cameo on food procurement, but something might come from there. But I really think that sustainable public procurement of food needs to be mandatory. Otherwise, there will be excuses. And of course, going to the second point, efficiency. Economic efficiency is the mother of all excuses. It's those that is often referred to as saving taxpayers' money, which if I were teaching constitutional law at first year in law school, and the student was going to talk me about taxpayers' money, she or he will not pass the exam. It's no more taxpayers' money. That's the state or the municipality money. And they use this not just to save it. They use this money to achieve different general interests, including the different shades of sustainability. So it is important to show that anything that we call efficiency is not just about saving money. Is about achieving general interest goals, including fight against climate change, fight against gender discrimination, and so on and so forth. Of course, this really needs to put as the Risteco policy paper highlights to put sustainability in its different aspects at the center. Going back to the reform, there are two general trends that might be useful here. Commission is really starting to believe into non-price criteria. So this is sending a strong signal. This means that efficiency is not about saving money, taxpayers or whomever. Efficiency is not just about price. Non-price means many things, innovation and so on, but this leaves room for sustainability, including sustainability in food procurement. The other new thing is the European preference, our version of Buy American. Well, those recently civilized people, they have this Make America Great Again, MAGA. Well, we can have a Make Europe Great Again, which is MEGA, which sounds even better than MAGA, because everyone having a bit of European culture would just think of the Greek roots of MEGA. This is, of course, relevant for food procurement. It might be not as if not a double-edged sword, at least something that is not so suited. European preference is still European, 27 member states. Tomatoes from Finland, and so on. It might be not a deft instrument enough. Also, okay, we have to see how the world develops in the coming months. Of course, European preference might lead to retaliation from other countries, and food is agriculture. And Europe is a big exporter of agricultural products. If you start having, let's say, European preference, then you might have other countries that are now buying European products having their own preferences. Of course, this is very speculative. Most probably, the US will already be using this, so we could reciprocate in kind. From what I see on social media, a lot of shops and restaurants in Canada are now having placards saying that they are serving food coming from Canada or Europe, which means that probably European preference shouldn't go against Canada. Because we are having good relations with them. So I think what should be done And this is also, I'm talking about the lobbying, talking to Brussels is really to see how these non-price criteria can be, let's say, steered towards sustainability in general and with reference to food specifically. It's true that you can't have easily a food provision in the general directives, but you can mention food and catering in the recitals. And this would be already a success. Coming back fast, I only have 3 minutes left to the third question. Chinese model, well, I'm not very much aware of the Chinese model, where the state retains control over key sector. Well, state retains control over key sector in many ways, including state-owned enterprises. I'm an old Italian, a bit little, well, I'm not saying that Maurizio is old, but okay, we are from the same time. And Italy had a state-owned companies in the food sector. It was the Barilla, the Buitoni, the Motta, the Alemania. And that was a very sad moment, especially at Christmas, as well, these state-owned companies were making the saddest panettone in the world with very few candies and things like that. I don't know enough about the Chinese model. I think that we can find a European way, and probably, and this is a discussion I've already had many times with Maurizio and Chiara. What is key there is stopping outsourcing, catering, and starting bringing it back in the, let's say, hospitals, schools, and everywhere. Meaning that we should move less to less catering services procurement to more food procurement. Thank you a lot for listening and for having me.
Thank you very much, Roberto. This was very, very insightful. And yeah, we will have time then during the discussion, the roundtable, to go in more in depth into the reflections.
Sure.
Yeah. And so now I would like to introduce Professor Bent Ekberg Mikkelsen and to explore the intersection of public food procurement, nutrition, and sustainability, health and nutrition and sustainability. And he is an expert in public health nutrition, sustainable urban food systems, and his research at both the University of Lund and Copenhagen is focused on school and hospital nutrition, workplace food policies, and urban food strategies. And throughout his career, he has led multiple European funded projects and advised organizations such as the Council of Europe, the WHO, and the Nordic Council of Ministers. He is a pioneer in integrated food studies, and he emphasizes the transformation of food environments through research, policy, and innovation, with a particular focus on urban planning and citizen engagement. We would like Professor Bent to address three key questions that are the use of public procurement as a health strategy for health strategies. So how can public procurement, public food procurement directly supports healthier diets in schools, hospitals, and public institutions in general? Then the second question is more related to the link between agroecology and health. How can procurement, so strategy using promoting local and organic food systems while ensuring also affordability and accessibility? And then how to link procurement to the broader concept of food environments. So shaping food environments that are able to shift also consumption patterns towards a more plant-based, climate-friendly diets. So I'm pleased to give you the floor, Professor Wendt, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be in this panel and talking to this big audience. I guess that I'm going to start. I prepared a presentation, so let me start by sharing that. I believe that at least the panel, some of you guys in the panel are sitting down in close to Rome, close to the sea. So I just wanted to let you know where I'm sitting. I'm sitting also very close to the sea. So I'm a sort of have a double affiliation across this small strait between Sweden and Denmark. So I'm at the two universities, and what I'm going to talk about today is very much on school food, and this position gives me a wonderful opportunity to look at this, because Sweden and Denmark are totally different when it comes to school food and public meals. I would like to acknowledge the title. I don't know who came up with this wonderful word of nourishing the future, because that's what it's very much about. I'm going to come back to that. But basically in my talk, I'm going to try to make the link between the public procurement and healthy and sustainable diets, with a strong emphasis on young people, kindergarten and school. And basically which is my illustration here, what we are trying to the kind of research we're doing, me and my colleagues, is to understand what the city, this metabolism of the city as an ecosystem that is eating, how is that functioning, and what is the role of the public? And if you look, this is a average Danish city from above, and if you look at what are they doing, and here comes the school food in as the last, what are the actions, where are they eating, where does the food come from? Maybe the peri-urban areas. So what is the supply? If you have a local food system, then it comes from the peri-urban areas. You might have a local food hub. You might have a local food council that is trying to decide how the strategy should be. You might even have a living food lab. We have that in some cities. And then you have a lot of users. So a lot of public food service units, kindergarten, schools, and hospitals, and they are of course all different in the demands. So if you were to and basically the kind of study we are or the kind of understanding we want to develop is basically three things. What are they doing in the cities? How are they organizing it? How are they, for example, integrating or interacting with the citizens, or companies, and private sector? So what are they doing, and how are they doing it? And increasingly also we have started, and I know that many cities are doing this, started to look at what are the impacts, because when you do something, of course, you want to measure some kind of impact later on. And if you look at what are the components, if let's say you are a municipal food strategist sitting at the town hall, what are you then doing? What are the components of what you can do? And public procurement has for a long time been one of the important actions. You see school food here to the right, but you also have increasingly like actions on focusing on creating resilient supply chains that can resist crisis of security, crisis of health, and these kind of things. So these are the components that are in the toolbox of most municipal food strategies. How many municipal food strategies you have? Maybe Bettina later on can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would argue, well, you have at least 300 cities around the world in this Milan Urban Food Policy Pact that are cities that are actually doing something. And as I said, the impact is increasingly coming into focus. Now, just a small reflection, because I can speak from the Danish case, the first steps for this idea that a municipality or local food system should place requirements to the farmers was around 30, yeah, a little over 30 years ago, where organic public procurement was put on the agenda. My point is that we have about 30 or 35 years of experience there. And this is a kind of, when I speak to people out there, and I speak to a lot of people about this, what we call the Danish school food revolution, they would say, well, what is procurement? They don't have no clue of what is procurement. So it's a sense to be, with all due respect, a kind of backstage thing that is some lawyers sitting there in the town hall with behind dark curtains and doing agreements and contracts. But the interesting thing is that the front stage perspective, now we have been discussing school food in Denmark for the past 2-3 years, is it has been moving to the front stage. There's a high visibility. Everybody can understand that health and nutrition is important for kids, pupils, teachers, parents, headmasters. They are all engaged, and they are all both engaged in the sort of the healthier thing, but also the sustainable diets. And just one note that I want to make is that you can speak, when you speak about procurement, and as you know, my ambition is to make the link between the procurement and the school food and the healthier diets and sustainable diets, is that you have to have two interfaces, and that's going to be very specific, concrete now for the Danish schools that is going to participate in the pilot scheme, is that there's two interfaces. There's one where you are a kitchen, you are a public kitchen, then of course you buy some food from some kind of supplier, a wholesale seller, or you are a school that wants to buy the ready-made things. And these are two different interfaces. And obviously, if you buy carrots, onions here, it's totally different from if you buy ready-made meals arriving in a truck. So I'm just drawing to your attention to that fact. Now, I said, this idea of nourishing the future is what it's all about. And you probably know this, the Heckman principle is that investing early gets you a greater return. That's a sort of a general principle that argues for the fact, well, you should not intervene between among people like me, that's too late. You need to intervene among the kids in early childhood, in kindergartens, preschool, and in the K-12 education. That will get you the return you are looking for. And there's two good evidence from that. This from my very good colleague at Lund University, and you probably know that study that was published 3 years ago on the long-term effects of childhood nutrition at schools in Sweden. It's showing where they have this wonderful cohort, because Sweden had this universal free school meals for all for 60 years, and that gave them this wonderful opportunity of doing two cohorts, one that was having school food, one that was not having school food. And the interesting thing is that the long-term effect, you seldom have the opportunity to measure in intervention studies long-term impact, because your project is normally only 2 or 3 or 4 years. But they have this cohort, a natural experiment comparing, and what they found was that the people having school food tend to have a higher life income. They have to tend to have better health outcomes, and also a better education level. So that's one really good study, and you probably know, or otherwise I can draw your attention to the work in the School Meal Coalition, because School Meal Coalition, this alliance between about 100 countries in the world, published studies saying that $1 invested generates $9 in return if you look at all the beneficial effects. Now, reason for my arguing trying to make the link between the procurement and the school food is that this is the official Danish data on public meals. It's about 1 billion kroner. Sorry, it's 1 million meals, and we are about a little over 5 million in Denmark, so that you can count this as one of 5 of us in Denmark have a public meal every day. So it's quite big, but what is interesting is to look at the consumption, the value, and basically what I'm trying to argue here is it doubles the procurement and the power of public procurement. So now in Denmark we buy for half a billion euros, and in Sweden, which is a little bigger than Denmark, they buy for 1.5 billion. So we have some validation of these figures. So by introducing school meal now, will simply double the volume of the food. And what I put here is then a speculation or a sort of a statement. This is saying that if we assume two things, if we assume a money talk and a consumer's king dynamic, that is basically if you buy, you're the one that decides, and if you're the consumer, you are the one to decide. Then the doubling of volume will, of course, double the influence you have on the food system. That you can now suddenly, as a municipality, decide, well, we want to reduce the red meat, we want to increase the plant foods, we want to ban all ultra-processed food. So that gives you an amazing power that needs to then be utilized. Now, then just a few words about, I know that Denmark is a small country. I also know that we are all way behind when it comes to school meals that in Italy and Sweden, Finland, all other countries, Brazil, France is much more developed. So we had like a totally market-based solution, what I call the Wild West. And now recently it was decided, this is the important point, Denmark confirms free school meal as a pilot at least, and next 4 years for evaluating this. And as I said earlier, the impact is so important, because once you invest public money, of course you want to have an estimate on what are then the impacts, and that's going to be really important. And here's the sort of one suggestion for an evaluation design, that you measure before and you measure after, and then you measure schools with food and schools without food. And these are the key figures. We have close to 120 billion euros over 4 years. Large shares, of course, for the food, and then a little bit for evaluation. And expected 200 out of 1,500 schools is going to participate. And just a little note on what are the mechanisms behind this idea of that we can argue quite securely that introducing public school meals gives a nutritional superiority. So what you do is that you in intervention studies, you have some kind of healthy eating index, and then you compare with the alternatives. And what are the alternatives? That's maybe interesting to look at. Well, in Denmark, you can leave, at least the older kids can leave and buy ultra-processed foods from a mini market. You can skip lunch. You can have a good lunch bag, and you can have a really bad lunch bag. And then, so basically, what happens when you introduce public school meals is that you comply with nutritional standards. You cannot be a public supplier, at least not in Denmark and Sweden. You cannot be a public supplier of meals if you don't comply with the nutritional standards that are the recommended daily intake. So that comes basically for free, and this is what you do in intervention studies. You measure basically do you have like an increase in the healthy eating index score? Sometimes people are measuring BMI, but that's sort of really uphill because that's really difficult to measure. And then what they measure also is the dietary knowledge. You basically assume that introducing school meals increases the food literacy score. And this is just one example of how are you then looking across all these intervention studies. I don't want to go into details with that. Just want to jump to the slide showing that these are the recommendations. These are the assessment of the World Bank when they look at the strength of the evidence across different sectors. And my main point is that I've been speaking about nutritional benefits. My main point is that food at school can do more. Nutritional benefits are pretty simple, pretty banal, but the other benefits, these are the ones that is a little harder to measure, but they are there, and that I think is the challenge in school meal programs implementation, to look for those. So this is what they say. There's a 3-star level of evidence when it comes to, where's my mouse? Here's my mouse. Improved diet and diversity and quality. So a balanced diet. It's pretty safe. Now, what can then procurement do? And what we did recently is, because we have a big debate running here now on the implementation program, of course, the nutrient content needs to comply with the recommended daily intakes. It needs to have a climate impact, for example, under 500 grams per meal. Organics, a lot of Danish municipalities have a long, as I said, 30 years of experience in public organic food procurement. Plant-based diets, reducing the red meat, supporting a Danish government strategy on plant-based food. Seasonal, avoid fresh and not preserve and food imports. Locality, shorter and more resilient. That's the important point. More resilient chains. How can you survive in the times of crisis and security or health crisis? Food waste needs to be measured as part of the quality assurance. Pedagogical integration. You need to move into the classroom. Student involvement, participation is key. How do you do this? I showed in one of my first slides the idea of living food labs. This is one way of creating participation. Food literacy built into procurement. I don't know if Bettina, you're going to talk about it, but otherwise I can pitch the idea that when normally as a procurement official you buy food, but you can actually also ask for pedagogical components. You don't want only the food, you also want, let's say, some learning materials. But I'll leave that to you, Bettina. And we published that recently in this journal called Organics Now in Denmark to argue, well, it is important to build up some quality requirements. Here comes my one, and I think I'm going to come to an end soon. I introduced this idea of that food at school can do more. And I want to draw your attention. You already, Chiara, mentioned School Food for Change. We are using a slightly different model, and I was asked, Ben, why don't you do some proofreading on your slides? Well, I did. So this is not a mistake. It's an idea of arguing. Well, you need 4 things, at least if you want to do more. You need, of course, some healthy food in the kitchen. That's for sure, and that's pretty easy because that's complying with the nutritional guidelines. And it's about cutting on the red meats and increasing the plant foods. That's pretty easy. But you also need some commensality in the cafeteria. You need people to sit together and create some kind of social interaction, which is what creates and boosts the well-being of pupils. And then comes the important point here. You need some classroom interaction. You need to try to get the food into the teaching also. So not only serving plant foods, but also teaching about the plant foods. And then, of course, you need to reach out to the community. And I think without knowing all the details, I'm just following from the sideline, the Copenhagen and city of Malmö. I think that is what you're doing. And you have this wonderful word of the whole school food approach, which I think is very, very useful. And I just want to show, and then I come to an end. Unless, Chiara, you say that I have 10 minutes more. I don't think you can say that, but no. So just 4 examples of what we've been doing in the SESAM program, trying to move the food into the classroom, and not only moving the food literacy, but also to create some kind of food systems literacy. How are you going to grow food in the future? How are you going to cut the food waste? How are you going to measure on a daily basis the food waste you create using digital devices? How are you going to understand what is protein crops and what are the benefits of the protein crops when you introduce that in the school meals? So just 3 examples. You can take a look at the SESAM program. That's what we've been doing for the past 4 years. And close to my second, this is just this from a Finnish study showing that active food education actually creates a difference. Here you can see people that is having a balanced diet increases in the intervention. So there's actually beginning to come some good evidence on the impact. So I'm going to come to my take-home messages. Just want to, So increased interest in local food systems planning. We can see that at the municipalities, some of them, what comes next here? Local food systems planning increasingly includes concerns for building a resilience into the supply chains. How are you going to survive? How are you going to make sure that kids in school are going to eat even in security and health crises? The planning toolbox contains multiple components, more and more. Public procurement was the classical one. But school food is also increasingly one of the tools, actions, interventions that you are taking at the municipal level. And as I said, school food can provide nutritional benefits, but it can also give you those additional, what I call the do more, such as food literacy, better learning capacity, well-being, social connectedness, and just a word on the food literacy, because food literacy is actually a predictor of you having a balanced and more sustainable diet in your adult life. We know that from tracking studies that focusing on food literacy, training, understanding, skills, knowledge is a predictor of long-term skills and knowledges. Increasingly also seen as part of the local communities, farmers, interactions between local stakeholders and the schools. And by that, I think I'm gonna come to an end and say thanks for your attention, and maybe we're gonna see each other on the Food Place and Innovation in September. Thanks a lot. And then I'm gonna try to see if I can unshare my screen. Here we go.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben, for your presentation. You gave us very, very interesting insights and data also that often are lacking. But it's very, very interesting to see the project that you are currently carrying out. And hopefully we will have more time to get into the details through also the questions of our audience. And now I would like to give the floor to Bettina. We will delve more into the implementation of sustainable public food procurement in practice. And since Bettina has a long-standing experience in organic and food procurement, sustainable food procurement more in general, and she played a key role in implementing and reaching the goal of the municipality of Copenhagen of serving 90% of all the food from organic production. And beyond Copenhagen, she's also the coordinator of Denmark national public procurement the public procurement network for food procurers in Denmark. And she collaborates with the Ministry of Food and Environment on green public procurement guidelines. She's also now a member of the European Commission expert group for public procurement, and contributed to the draft of the green public procurement criteria at the European level. So she has experience also from the policy side, and not just the practice, bringing the challenges, but also the best from the field to the policy making. And for you, Bettina, we would like to address three main questions that are the first, which are the main success drivers and also the challenges that you experienced in implementing your food strategy in Copenhagen. Then which are the best tools and mechanisms to improve and support local suppliers and SMEs participation in public procurement, ensuring compliance with European and national rules on public procurement. And finally, since the policy paper, the Risteco policy paper, highlights the role of emerging technologies like AI and blockchains, which are, in your opinion, the main challenges for local governments to in adopting these technologies, but also which role they can play in enhancing sustainable public food procurement, and if in Copenhagen you have already some experience with using new technologies for that. And so thank you very much for being here today with us, and I give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you know, you are also one of my heroes, so we fit good together. But it has been so interesting to be here so far, because we work on the same areas, but in different angles. So it inspires me highly to hear that some of the tools that we are using in Copenhagen to create the procurement, also from the scientist side, maybe could help improve the food system and also move for better health. So this has been so far for me very interesting. I will share my screen if possible. I have a little bit internet connection, so let me know if I fall out or if something goes wrong. Hopefully everything will be fine, but don't hesitate to interrupt me, okay, Chiara? If it goes wrong.
Okay.
So
we
maybe you see my screen now, maybe,
yes.
And I'm to make it full screen. Do you see the full screen also?
Yes.
Or maybe not.
That's perfect.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, that's perfect.
It's slow here, but that's fine. Because we are in the mountains, so it's not just the pictures of the mountain. We are actually in the mountains right now in Italy, where we are supposed to, I'm giving a speech at a conference later today, also about public procurement, because it is finally becoming a highly recognized tool where you can actually use it to shift something. This picture I always use because that's how I felt when I started in the municipality in 2009, being alone, having to cross the mountains, only with my backpack of procurement, regulations, rules, and the math I knew. I'm educated a business lawyer, so I knew both the calculation side and the economic side and the law side. But I thought the mountains were so high because I knew that I had to procure for some catering contracts for few of our students, institutions that do not have food production on site, but mainly in Copenhagen, we prefer to cook mainly on site. So we have a chef hired by the municipality cooking for the citizens. We supply food for children and youth. We supply for elderly. at nursing homes and Meals on Wheels for elderly. And we also supply food for social vulnerable people. So this is the area we cover in the city of Copenhagen. No matter what kind of contract you're making, if it's catering or if it's where you buy food that will be cooked by a chef, you can make a difference by the things you put into your procurement. So this is important that you know that sometimes, because mostly I talk about buying food and food procurement, but you can make the similar or the same changes within a catering contract. In Copenhagen, we serve approximately 115,000 meals per day. It is mostly lunches for school kids, but it's since it's also elderly and social vulnerable people, it is also the full day cost. So it's all these together. We have 1,100 kitchens approximately. So it's a lot of places to deliver for the suppliers. So if you open up for small scale farmers, they'll be like, no, 1,100, it's impossible. So we need to go with a wholesaler for most of our food, but then also we can open up, and this is where we have to know the market. We have to see who's there, what can they do. And also by putting in different criteria, we also have to be aware, can the market follow us? Is it possible for them to meet our demand? And also, could we support them in becoming better and greener? So this is what I love to do, working systemically with the market, but also with the political demands we have. And talking about the political demands, our politicians decided in 2001 to put a target as 90% organic, like you said. Most of you already heard this, but it was actually to save the groundwater in that time. So that's, and at that time we didn't have that much organic. So many said, that's not going to happen. And we were to reach the goal in 2015 without no extra cost for food. So they decided to train the kitchen staff to cook differently, to cook more from scratch, to have less waste, to use less meat. So already at that time, they started to transforming the meals that we eat to becoming more green. And I think that is one of the tools that we all need to look into. Serving a healthy, sustainable meal, but that is also freshly cooked, hopefully, and then that is delicious, because then it's also eaten. So I see, actually, even though I'm just a procurement officer and doing the economic and the law part, I see my job fulfilled when they're served a delicious meal for the citizen and it's eaten. Then my job as a procurement officer is done, because then I was that little wheel that made the procurement spin so that the chef could cook delicious meals, not having to think about all the other things, and then they could serve the meals for the citizens. So we have a food strategy, like you said, also describing the 90%, and it's just last week been decided that we will have a new one. So in the next year, we will be working on creating a new food strategy, and we will see where it takes us. Right now, it looks like cut back on red meat. Already now, my mayor of children and youth, we have 7 mayors, one for each department, but so my mayor for children and youth decided that the children going to daycare and schools are not having any red meat since August last year, to make sure that the CO2 reduction will become bigger. And then they talked about animal welfare. So in the next food strategy, I will assume there will be something about animal welfare and how to make sure that we do not buy any food, for example, because 90% target leaves 10%. And some of the 10%, we can see that the kitchen staff thinks, then we can buy cheaper meat, not organic. And so we also see that some of them bought tofu chicken, like the chicken that grows very fast and is very bad. So they decided already now to say, no, this is not allowed. They only can buy organic halal slaughtered chicken or organic chicken. So this is interesting where it's going, and we will see within the next year what they will decide. This is the city level politics, but we also have national level politics. And that's, like you said, Chiara, I work on different layers because I really find it interesting how we can implement global politics, how it goes to the national level, and then how it goes to the city level, and then how it goes to the kitchen. And then by going to the kitchen, being implemented, and you can actually measure it. So we have our official dietary guidelines we have to follow and work them in. And often when you talk to a procurement lawyer, me also, in former times, I would say this is for the kitchen stuff. This is for the people cooking, not for me, because I'm not cooking. So I don't need to know how much salt this goes in there and that we need to eat more lentils and things. But then again, yes, it has, because we are changing. And if you are changing, you have to make a procurement that fits the changes that we need. If you don't, then the kitchen stuff cannot change. If you only look at what you bought yesterday or the year before, and that's what you procure for, then you cannot do the changes that are needed in the changing shift of diets. We also have the Sustainable Development Goals. We all committed to these. And within our last tender, we wrote that within School Food for Change, actually, because they also have some criteria that they would like us to include. And luckily, they fitted with what we also want to include in Copenhagen. And we worked on the packaging. So our politicians said they only want PET packaging. If it's plastic, it should be PET. We want to prevent food waste, not only in our kitchen, but also at the supplier side. And wishful all the way to the farm side or to the production side. How can we do this? So they want us to build in to the procurement that we will make a project with our wholesalers so we can look in the food chain and help minimize food waste. We work with seasonality and diversity, climate-friendly food, measuring how big climate weight does it have. We, of course, have the organic food. So all the food that we put into the procurement is organic. And then we also have in the procurement that they can buy whatever besides the things that we specifically ask for. So it's a bit complicated, but it works very well. And the things that we have put namely into the contract is only organic. Then we have sustainable soy and sustainable palm oil. They have to measure how many produce do they put soya in, and is it sustainable or not? And organic, of course. Sustainable fishery, they have to mark how many fish comes from MSC, ASC, or we also have a Danish sustainable stamp. They also could get points on this one. And then fairly traded goods, transportation, we want to minimize it. We want green electronic vehicles, so they get points on that one. And then we want nutritional, healthy food. So we want to reduce the salt, and we also put in there that we want a project on this. How can we get more healthy food? And then we try to use procurement as a tool for teaching. So we want to link the food that we buy with the children and with the market. I'll tell you a little bit more about this later on. So as you hear, I really think that the procurement lawyers can be the key of the change that we need. We can decide to do as we did yesterday, and the land will get drier and drier. But we can also try to do something differently. And here it's important that we work with researchers, because I don't know anything about food changes or the things that we need. So I need to get the information that from research scientists saying, this is where we need to go, this is what we need to do. And then also the politicians, they need to incorporate this into the political goals. And then it will allow the procurement officers to fit it into the procurement. But it's very complicated sometimes if you don't know how to. And that's also why you said, like Chiara, that we create this food procurement officer network. We did this to share knowledge, because normally food procurement officers, they do a lot of different kind of food or procurement, not just food. I think I'm very lucky and very unique that I'm only doing food procurement. This is my specialty. So I've been doing it since 2009. So I know quite a bit about food procurement now. But normally procurement officers, they do road salt, diapers, heavy machinery, and then food. So how should they know what criteria to put in there? And that's why we created this network to do this. So I think it creates to do the changes. We need the procurement officers, specialists. We need conversion agents who help the kitchen staff to cook differently. We need an intensive market dialogue, and then we need dialogue with the kitchens also, how to cook differently and what do they need. Seasonality, like I mentioned before, this is something that we brought up into our procurement. We have seasonality according to eating habits. What do we usually eat? When do we eat it? We eat strawberries traditionally in Denmark in May, June, July, not in December. We only buy them occasionally, and then we should not procure for it just because we once in a while have it. We have traditional food. We have to cling to our food tradition, and then we have to have the food literacy. Where do it come from? So that we know the food that we eat. I think this is one of very important. But when we talk about seasonality, it's also where is it grown? At what time is it in season? And then we want the diversity. We want many different kind of apples, not just Pink Lady, Granny Smith, Royal Gala. They're good apples, but not just those three. It would be nice to have more. And that's why we actually put out for procurement that we give points on how many different kind of apples can they offer to us. I think in the last tender we got, this tender I'm referring to here, we had 86 different kind of apples from the different suppliers, and the winning tender had 38. The one we just made with the wholesaler, we have 26 different kind of apples in season. So it works. It really works. And then, of course, we have to do the contract management. And hopefully we will not have these apples that are stored in warehouses for years and years and years, because now we are buying fresh apples in seasons. And we also have to teach our kitchens to buy then the fresh apples that we offer, and not just the standard apples that they are used to having. We also try to do diversity and seasonality in legumes, in meat. So this is like, it's all over wherever we can see that it's needed, and that so for example, we know that we eat a lot of duck, but mainly at Christmas time. So of course we have to make sure that the suppliers, they know that it will be at Christmas, and maybe in November we eat duck, and not all year round, only a little bit. So that they can differ their supply for us. We made tenders, like I said, for the wholesaler, but we also made small tenders because we see, for example, fresh fish in season can be hard for the wholesaler to manage. They're getting better at it because we work with them intensively, but there are also firms that are specialized in fish. So we made this contract where we will buy fresh fish in season, unspecified. So whatever they catch, they will deliver for us with a little recipe or with a little note saying this is what they caught. And then we try to see if we can buy it from small-scale fisheries where they have this special stamp saying fishery without no harm. We want to buy a whole fish so that the kids can see the fish and they can cut it and they can be taught about it. But of course, we also want to make sure that they don't get a bone stuck in their throat. So most of the fish we will get cut by professionals, and then we will have a test fish so that they can see it and they can touch it. So we use a lot of teaching. The same we did with the potato tender. We did a potato tender with a farmer because we had a farmer saying, I will never be able to deliver to you guys because you never put potatoes out for tender. That's all I do. Then I said, if you say that, then we actually have to open up our tenders towards small and medium-sized enterprises and farmers, because that's what the law actually says. If possible, you should do this. So you should use the tools that are actually within the procurement directive right now. We opened it up, and I wrote about this in a project called Coach, where you can read more about it. And then through Food Trails, luckily, we could implement it. So in the tender, we wrote that we wanted to buy these buckets. We wanted to buy the potatoes. We wanted to buy the soil. And then we created some stickers for the kids so they could grow their own potatoes. Some brought them home. Some had them at school. Some had them inside the windows. We also had some at the office. And when we harvested, we have like 5 buckets of potatoes, and when we only harvested 200 grams of potatoes. So I'm definitely not a farmer. I can conclude that one. The kids luckily harvested more, but still they could see how hard it was. They had the teaching at school. What happens when you grow potatoes? How do they evolve? And the farmer, he digged it up for them so that they could see here how it grows during, while it was growing. And then actually they visited the farmer. And one of the kids, when he stepped out, it was like 13 years old. They're like, oh my God, you're that famous farmer from YouTube. And you can see some of the videos here. I will be sharing the links with you. So it really had an effect of coming to see the big scale farming. And then hopefully by this, Ben also talked about the food literacy and how it's important that they know about the food and where it comes from, and we can use it as teaching. This is also something with the new school scheme where they're focusing on learning about what we eat, because I trust and believe that if we know what we eat and how it's grown, where it comes from, then we will also treasure the food that we are served more. In our procurement, we do only 30% on price. So we calculate all the prices, and then that counts for the 30% of the procurement. The rest, 70%, will be testing the quality, and it will be all the sustainable criteria that I talked about, the driving and the packaging and all this. So that's 70% of our procurement. So, and then of course the taste. I think the taste measures for 25% of these. Everything is good. You can write everything in a procurement, but if you do not do contract management, what's worth it? You have to also in your procurement, and this is new for us. So in the last tender, we actually put in how would we follow up, how we would make sure that the changes that we want to make are actually done, so that we can measure during the contract that it's actually happening. So we have the data, and this is where you talked about how do you use data, how do you use AI. Here we hopefully cannot have to do it by human force only, but hopefully through machinery we will be able to. But still, it's really new, and for me it's really new. I sometimes have a hard time turning on my computer, and that's also why I was scared that technique would fall here. So we hire somebody to help us do this, and it's still building up. But I also think that data is very vulnerable, because what you mark your data on and the food that we mark, sometimes you cannot see where the food comes from. It just says Europe. And then even if it says Europe, it's not even, maybe the ingredients come from abroad, and everything is fine by coming from abroad. So, because I'm a procurement lawyer, in theory, I don't care where the food comes from. I just need to know. So then I can do criteria that supports one or the other, or resilient food system, and we can make sure we build this through the procurement. But if we do not know where the food comes from, then how can we measure it? How can we support getting a more diverse food system all around the globe? So this is some of the things that we do. We measure it, we do contract management intensively, and we are also dealing with this and sharing with this into the procurement officer network, how we do this. We have a focus on 50% reduction of CO2 by 2035. We want to reduce the delivery days, so we want also to try to deliver at night. This is new for us, so this is some of the things that we're going. And then we want to try to have more healthy food into the tenders, reduction of salt in the bread, maybe the few pre-processed foods we have, because we believe in few of these, making sure that they are the healthy choices of it. And so we want to work with this more, because we actually see that it matters. We already now reach the goal that we had of reduction, 25 reduction. And if you see this red little bar, that is the remnant meat, the red meat. But then this is how much we buy in tons. Then if you see where it's very big, this is how much it measures in CO2. For me, it was an eye-opener. So even if we cut back a little bit, it's only 2% we buy out of everything we buy, but it's 41% of the CO2 emission. So even if we cut it back a little, it has a huge effect. So in the upcoming tender, like I said, we want to see if we can make them even more healthy. We want to connect it also with the diseases that we get later on in life, because we believe if we can do better, then we can also maybe prevent some of it, and at least teach the kids about it. And then hopefully they will bring it home. Hopefully they will bring it to their adulthood life. And then long-term investment, I believe in also, could help fight these diseases. So, and then also reduction of food waste. It's always, because that will definitely save even more CO2. And it's hard to measure. It's even harder to measure if the food was not even produced, because right now they don't know what we ask for. It's from day to day we get delivery. So if we can be better at predicting what we want and maybe minimizing our shelf life, then we can also have a less food waste. But that will be hard to count sometimes, but this is some of the things that we will work on. Could we predict how many tons of legumes will we buy within the next year, and what kind and what type? Maybe we can even talk with the farmers so they can plant it for us. Maybe we can be more precise on how many chickens do we need of organic chickens, so that they can breed the chickens for us, even before we ask for them. That would be really nice. That would be a dream. All these things we share within the procurement officer network. We started the Danish one in 2019, had great success. So now we started a European one together with DJ Sante, where they're also trying to renew the Green Public Procurement Guidelines. I helped write the last ones, but I'm also helping a little bit on how to formulate the new ones. And then, like you said, working on the Green Public Procurement Guidelines with DJ Sante, linking it to DJ Agri, but also linking it to DJ Grow, who's now looking at the procurement directive in general. That makes sense for me, because then you can actually see, okay, how can we use this as a mechanism to go change the things that we want? So as you see, we started the network in 2023. That was only the green countries, and now we have all the green countries over here that are already participating. So we are a lot of procurement officers, and many of these procurement officers participating in the European Procurement Officer Network are now building national procurement officer networks. So it shows that it's working. We also have a network on a global scale, One Planet Network for food procurement officers and food procurement in general. And it was started, like the idea was started many years ago, but now it's coming along, it's growing up bigger and bigger, and it's quite interesting. So, and I think it's open for everybody, so everybody can join, listening how you can use this as a tool. Here are some of the materials that we made. It's available for everybody to dive into and go more into depth on how did we do this. Because I think that we need to be open about what we do. It has to be transparent. I'm a procurement lawyer, so everything has to be see-through. I don't hide anything. And when you walk together through the mountains, it's much more fun than you walk on your own. So that's why I stopped with this picture. Thank you. That was me.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's always very, very inspiring and enriching to listen to your presentations and what you have achieved so far, and the vision that you have for the future, and all these also the new chapter of the food strategy in Copenhagen. We look forward to learning new things from that. And so with your presentation,
more I was thinking about, Chiara. Roberto, he said something about creating. As I remember it, and you must help me, Roberto, if I remember wrong. But the systemic changes that we need, and trying to make it more unified. And I think in Copenhagen, like Ben said, we are now, or in Denmark, we are now having this food procurement or school meals. And actually, I have just been talking with the ministry to create like a one-fits-all procurement, so that they can click on the different sustainable criteria that fits each city, but then it will build the procurement material in the same way, so that for suppliers it's easier to look at. Because right now we do different procurements, all of us, like we write our own. So if we could create one that would fit all, but then not everybody would take all the criteria. So it was just saying that I completely also, if I understood you correctly, that to create these, so it makes it easier for everybody. So I'm really excited about this new chapter of procurement, hopefully for Denmark. It will be fun. So I don't know if I will succeed, but at least it will be a challenge that will be fun. Sorry, it was just, I just remembered I wanted to say.
Roberto, do you? Oh my God, sorry. Would you like to comment?
It's perfect. Make it easy for procurement official.
Yeah, and if I may, also, it's a matter of standardization that makes it easier, and it's the kind of thing that we also try to achieve in Italy with the adoption of the minimum environmental criteria that are standardized criteria that must be implemented also in food procurement. And but this aspect, Bettina, of modularity that you were also referring to, I think that's even more interesting, because then you can tailor the criteria to the local needs, and just choose the ones that are better fitted to the context. So I think it's really interesting. And yes, so thank you again to the speakers for their insightful presentations. And I would like to open the floor to any questions, and also then give the opportunity to our co-moderator Silvestre to provide additional insights and inputs on mainly taken from the experience in France. So adding a new country to the discussion, and yeah. So if there are questions, please write them in the tool of Q&A, and otherwise we can maybe move to Sylvester. I don't see questions so far. Okay, maybe we can, Sylvester, if you want to.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, Mariano, for the invitation. It's first time for our association to participate at that kind of webinar in a subject that we have integrated to our program since this association of catering manager is 30 years old, and we have this kind of quality politic in public food meals since a long time. And this way to integrate quality food in the public catering is a real question for us. And what we see is first of all, it's a convergence of all that European politics, and we think that it's a real society subject. But for us, public procureur, we're daily making a job with in thinking that all that European competition laws make difficulties to integrate local products. And what we see in the intervention of Mrs. Bergman-Madsen is that we need a lawyer. We need a lawyer to purchase food, and that's difficult because in France, local structure is very disparate. There's many collectivities, and we're not able to do that kind of job, which is very nice. What you did, it's very important and very interesting, but it's difficult. Also, in France, we have a national policy. In 2018, there is a loi Egalim, the law that make an obligation for public catering, public food providing, is 50% of food of quality. Not localism, of course, because of the EU competition laws, but that's what the ministry wanted. It wanted that food procurement should be more local as possible. And it's very difficult for us to integrate that notion. Not all the colleagues are respected the European rules, but anyway, we try to bypassable. We try to bypass by a lot of criteria, but what you show, you have many criteria, but all that criteria can be interpreted, because it's very difficult to quantify sustainability. You can quantify price, you can quantify sometimes quality, but sustainability, it's very difficult to make numbers to have criteria which are measurable. That's it. That's what I want to say. That we're working on it in the French Ministry of Agriculture. we have a group that works from a bank of criteria, which could be opposable, which could be given to all the public procurers.
Thank you. It is so interesting that also in your case, in the case of France, so the direction is towards a more streamlined and standardized criteria, because actually, yeah, there is a complexity, a technical complexity and a legal complexity, and also in terms of economic aspects. So food procurement is requires a lot of competencies and skills and multidisciplinarity, and so it's essential to provide user-friendly tools for contracting authorities and procurers to make their job easier. Yeah. So thank you also for your input, and I don't see any question in the Q&A box. I don't know if we have additional maybe additional remarks from the speakers, or if Maurizio, if you want to
sorry. Chiara, I have a
yes, sorry, I didn't.
It's okay. It's okay. Yes. Because I fully agree that it would be. I also talked with there's actually a person from France within the group of experts working on the new directive, and they also said that it's very decentralized in France, and I know it's the same in Slovenia, so very decentralized. What I believe that it would be nice to have one or two procurement officers specializing in different areas of procurement, not just food, but food is my specialty. That's what I like to talk about, of course. But it comes from clothing and vehicles and everything. But if we specialized and we built food procurement officer network, and now with the AI and the blockchain things that I don't know that much about, but luckily matching up with people who knows a lot about this, then we can, with me helping to form the criteria on food, for example, we can build something that can be translated into many different countries, the language. So it's a tool that the local could use, and then click, click, click. This is what I would like. This is what fits my school or my, local entity. And then they could create a simple procurement easily. So then they would not have to know, and we would make, of course, like a framework of a legal contract framework. So it's easy to understand for everybody. And then it would also be not that time consuming for you guys to give a bit, because you would know how it's structured always. We know this regulations, and then we could optimize it. And I think that could be one of the ways, because as Ben said, it is so, we see how important it is that they get the right amount of food, that they get the right quality of food, and that they also know where it comes from. So I think these are some of the things that we could really in this digital world optimize, even though I don't know how to. I just know how to put the criteria, but then we need to link, and then that is also one of the things I said, where we have the opportunity to do the change. Maybe we need another one saying AI specialist or somebody who knows about technology to build this, because we are so different in different countries, and not all of us use lawyers to create the procurement. Also, some of the procurement I make are almost 300 pages long. That may be a little bit too much, but I am also a lawyer, so I like to pin it out. Yeah, that was just my comment. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bettina. Yeah, indeed, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that Sweden has something like this, like a digital website with the criteria that they are adopted by at the central level. I think the central purchasing body, they are proposing some criteria for different categories, and they are available on the website. I think this is also interesting because then the process of revising the criteria is faster than also because they are not probably they are like suggestions, guidelines, but legally they are not binding as if they were adopted in a law or in a decree. But depending on the nudging effect that they can have, they could be useful because then you can revise them according to new developments and feedback easily than with a decree or a law. So and then of course the issue of having these standardized criteria also helps the predictability for the market and the operators to know which kind of criteria to expect in tenders. So for sure, I think that's a good direction where at the national level many countries are going, and then through technologies maybe we can make it more fit to the current times than with traditional methods such as decrees or laws that are hard to read, interpret, and yeah, it depends. There are some.
And like Roberto, he said, we would like mandatory criteria. I completely agree because that would then make us all have to change. But as long as we don't, then the voluntary part and making it easy to use the voluntary part could be a step on the way. I think it's not the perfect solution, but it's better than nothing. At least that's my belief. Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
I completely agree. I mean, obviously, there's a succession between having no criteria, moving to voluntary criteria, and then by the end, compulsory, obligatory criteria. We see that because in the Danish case now, there's a discussion on basically what the quality criteria is. There's two things: comply with the national guidelines on nutrient intake and sustainable diet. These are the basic two requirements that suppliers need to comply with. And then, as I said, I showed in my slides, there's a lot of additional ones that could then have the character of voluntary criteria. And I think that's important then that the municipalities step up and say, well, we are then gonna try and use some of these voluntary guidelines. One thing that, if I may, Chiara, with your permission, add one thing, because it's mentioned here in these very good questions for the speakers here, the idea of food environments. And one thing that has been obvious to us, we have been working with our SESAM schools, is that the food environment outside the schools, because no matter how much school food we're going to have, there will always be a food environment outside. And I see a lot of focus now on, we've been speaking about healthy diets, we've been speaking about fruit and vegetables, but nobody is speaking about the ultra-processed food, which I think is going to be a really, or is already a nutritional challenge, which is very much related to the food environment. That is what you find in supermarkets, mini markets just across the road from school. So I would like to see, when we speak about guidelines, when we speak about criteria, that the school could do something in the about this competitive food around the schools, because that's where you buy your ultra processed foods, and as you probably know, close to half of our energy intake in Western countries is coming from ultra processed foods. That's where the school food can do a difference, serving fresh foods. So just and I'm trying to advocate for an increased focus on, because you don't find that in nutritional guidelines. It doesn't speak about ultra processed food, but it needs to come sooner or later as a criteria, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed, it's a point to be discussed. There are few experiences of laws that were passed through to ban the selling of specific ultra processed, or it's more about fast food. Like I know some cases of prohibitions of fast food close to schools, but there are or also rules to ban advertising of processed food or fast food close to school, but is something that is um, is still underlooked for sure. It's very important. And we have Roberto with an intervention.
Just two small points on mandatory. The first is how you make mandatory criteria. It will be the Commission making them, so it is necessary to make sure that they really rely on some good practices. You don't take these for granted. The second point, it would be super important that any mandatory food catering procurement criteria is a minimum, allowing to go beyond the minimum. It can't be acted like a ceiling, because to be applicable all over Europe, 27 member states, I don't expect any criteria to be super ambitious. So it will not be Copenhagen. And if these are not minimum criteria, these are just hard criteria, then Copenhagen should fall back, which of course we don't want to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Yeah, Maurizio.
Yeah, Ben, I agree. I mean, that's the problem of zoning. I mean, of food service, other food service activity or food retail activity nearby the school is a huge problem from a long time. I remember in UK they were trying to regulate this many years ago. But if I can add, the problem is also to identify what is the processed food or hyper-processed food, because today there is there is one classification is the NOVA that is differentiating in 5 categories. And one of the main problems that today there is also a huge conflict of interest in the research group that they are really restudying and they want to modify the NOVA classification. And that's also, it's a big deal, because if we shift the hyper-processed food into processed food or processed food into other category, because we shift the rules in how we define what is a processed food or what is a ultra-processed food, that is the main problem, because in a call for tender in the school, if we want, we can say, we don't want to have any ingredients, super processed food of this NOVA classification. And this is objective element.
And if I may chip in, I completely agree. There are some shortcomings and weaknesses of the NOVA classification. My point is that the NOVA classification came from Brazil more than 15 years ago, and nobody has basically been doing anything before now where people start criticizing it, which I completely agree. There's a lot of critique you can ask, you raise, but my main criticism is that nobody, including the national food agencies, took this seriously and came up with a new classification or a even better NOVA 0.40 version, and that I think is a problem.
Yeah, because this should be, I mean, it should be really useful. I understand and I know, I mean, it was made by Brazilian researcher really 20 years, more than 20 years ago, but it's still use. I mean, we can use, and after, of course, it's also, everything should be make it better, but we need to pay attention who is in charge to shift this classification. It should be a more broader stakeholder group than only few scientists of a few university financed only by one foundation. I don't want to make name because this is the reality of today. So this is very important. This is something that I will talk next week in a forum in Agores with Silvestre. My speech will be really to mutualize, because if I can summarize some, I mean, thought about my work on studying and researching on public food service, is that there is a lot of interest case study around Europe, but it's still quite impossible to establish a common frame. Because of course also food is diversity in the north of Europe. We eat in a different way than in Spain or than in Greece or than in Italy, but we really need to find a common ground to really push and raise the voice at the European Parliament, at the European Commission, to foster really social innovation. It's not only a question of buy local, organic or not organic. The public food service is something more. Behind the meal, behind the ingredient we use, there is labor. We need to requalify chefs. We need to give dignity to this kind of people working in social canteen. So many challenges we have to face in the years to come if we want really to have a good and a clean and health public food service in Europe. Chiara, it's up to you, conclusion.
Yes, actually, I don't know if Sylvester, would you like to give some conclusion?
No, it's very interesting to see that it's like as Mauricio say, that food procurement, catering and public catering, it's a really very good level for local economy, education, because I think we can make all the effort we want for good food or health food if we don't use the school like a place to educate to healthy way to feed them the children. Nowhere there is no consequence. Come on, the public catering, it's only one meal or two meal per week. The other meals are taking that home. And we in France, we are very, we do a lot of action to combine good food and food education. And that food education, there's no better place than in the 2 days meal to educate what is a healthy food and what's an equilibrated meal. And it's also a part that must be integrated in public policy.
And if I may, Chiara, just because you were mentioning the Swedish school food program, and as I mentioned, the Swedish school food program, along with the Finnish, by the way, have like a 60 or 70 years of experience. What we're doing now here is a program called a new recipe for the school food. And I just want to draw your attention to two things, which is in line with what just said about education. There's two main recommendations: is try to get the food into the classroom. Don't consider school food as a sort of a passive serving of food. It needs to be active food literacy training by going into the classroom. That's the one recommendation. The other one is make provisions for asking pupils for advice. Invite the kids to co-create, to participate in co-creating recipes, in co-creating menus. That's two of the important recommendations. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very, very interesting. And indeed, recognizing the moment of lunch, of the school lunch, as an educational moment is key, and is something that has been developing also in Italy. We also have some court rulings about that, about the importance also of having the moment of lunch as a socializing moment. So there were some cases pronouncing on the right of children to bring food from home, for example, and there was this discussion that the moment of lunch is a moment of aggregation, of equality also, because everyone is served the same food, and the importance of using the moment to teach about food. And I was thinking when Bettina, and also I will leave you the floor, Bettina, now for these last minutes. But when you presented the case of the potato, I was also thinking that it's not just about food literacy, but also agriculture literacy, in the sense that when you expose children also to the profession of the farmer, we are also touching on an issue that is crucial nowadays in Europe, that is the intergenerational change and renewal that we must have in the farming sector, and the fact that many farms are disappearing in Europe. So it's also a matter of, as Maurizio was saying, like attaching value to all the professions that are linked to school catering and to institutional catering in general. So it's not just the profession and the work of the cooks and the canteen staff, the teachers, but also the farmers, and the fact that they can be seen as this could be seen as an attractive word, an attractive job, and also tackling the problem of decrease in farming in Europe. And so I leave you.
But on that one, Chiara, I actually fully agree, and it just now made me think that we did this with the cooking in Copenhagen, and we actually saw that the chefs gained pride in the work. They were not just reheating and serving crappy food. Now they are actually really, really proud. And we can also see that the sick leave of the chefs are less. We have not so big, of course, we have return on, because we have 1,100 kitchens, so it's a lot of people, but it's not like highly. So if we could do something similar with the farmers, like putting them at the forefront, as they should be, like saying, hey, this is amazing. They produce the food that we need. What a brilliant job, like, so you always, I think we can do something. And this was where, when seeing this cool farmer on YouTube, they were like, oh, you're that farmer, oh my God. It was completely starstruck, and they wanted his signature, and he was just like, okay. So it was, and I just want to, from my part, stop by saying I have high hopes. When I started talking about procurement, everybody was like, and now things are actually changing. People are thinking, a lot of people talking about procurement. We see that it's a tool, so it's kind of spread, and I think the same with sustainability, and I call it robust food chains. How can we make sure that we go from having professionals at the field who are growing delicious food, that are proud with their job, who sees the importance of that they are actually creating the change, to the chefs who's actually cooking the meals, to serving it for the citizens who's enjoying eating it. That would, and I think we are getting there. I feel it, that the changes, even though then the regulations and the politicians and sometimes, but we are people also working on this, and we are many people who are engaged in so many different layers. So I still have high hopes, but I'm always like that also. I like that too much. So, but I found it was interesting. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm inspired even more now. So happy and inspired. Thank you.
Thank you. We are all very very grateful for also for these optimistic words of conclusion, because we need it. And yeah, I would like to thank you again, all the speakers, my co-moderator, Silvestre, Maurizio, and Marina for the organization, all the audience, because yeah, we are many interested in public food procurement and trying to improve it. So thank you also, yeah, for your time to all the participants and. Yeah, I think we can conclude here. If Maurizio, Silvestre, you want to say the last words, otherwise I will free everyone to go to a healthy and sustainable lunch, hopefully.